I'm Neil Murray. I am the CTO and co-founder of Mimecast.
Well, great stand here that Mimecast have at Infosec 2013. Lots of fun stuff going on. Of course, you are well known for dealing with organisations trying to get and move into the cloud. Start off by talking about the barriers that companies are still having when they're migrating their services to cloud. Is security still a major barrier?
I think it's less of a barrier than it was. When we started out, the questions were immature, I think, and we did a lot of education. But as time's gone on, we're getting much more sophisticated questionnaires from our prospects, and those guys are really well informed. The barrier is lower, my perception. They understand that probably the data is safer with someone else nowadays, and that's quite a revelation for them.
Have you seen over the last couple of years a big leap in understanding that IT managers now have around cloud? Do you find that they're coming better armed with information?
Yes, absolutely. So after you've had 50 questionnaires sent to you with pretty much the same questions on them, you get to the point where you need to certify yourself, essentially. So you can, we pursued our ISO 27001 plan just so we could do that. Essentially, they want the trust, they want the certification, so that when you get those questionnaires, there's already the ready-made answers for them.
Well, I know, Neil, you've been associated with the statements, all clouds aren't equal. Explain what you meant about that.
Right. Look, I think a lot of companies have started up with the idea that they can store information in the cloud, but over 10 years we've learned a lot more about it. Certainly we understand that you need those certifications, but you also need the technology that secures those things, not only from outside threats, but from your own people. And it's a strange thing to not trust your own people with your own data or the data that you are looking after for custodians.
We've noticed a bit of a trend in a lot of the people we've spoken to at Infosec about the amount of investment and energy that's gone into securing various parts of the business. Now actually the weak point is a lot of it is the user endpoint. Is that something that you see as well?
Absolutely. So we want to make the data more useful, and the trouble is that if you do that and you're in a BYOD environment, what applications do you give to an end user such that they can get the use out of it and still have all those things like pin locks, remote wipes, integrity of the data, the data leak prevention stuff? It all has to work together. And if you don't have a platform that supports that, you can't answer those questions correctly.
As part of the craft of being a solutions provider at the minute, balancing what you're allowing, especially employees, to do with what you can't allow them to do for security's sake. Is it the balance there is part of the craft, I guess? Absolutely.
You want to let them do things with their data that make them more productive. And you want to do it within that safety zone. But there is a balance. There is a balance in that they can't just give that information out whenever they want to. It has to form part of the policies that are part of the organization. And therefore, all those endpoint applications need to be secured in a unified way.
If you were to give some advice to any IT managers watching this, still considering their move to cloud, how would you advise them to ensure that it's fully integrated and that it's as kind on resources as it can be during that move?
Sure, I guess you have to examine the technology, certainly. We've spent a lot of time putting together things that go into the LAN, that help the LAN integrate with the cloud. We're one of the only companies that has really invested in there, and that's things like single sign-on. Everybody just gets access to the data, but it's still secured in a way that you would expect. A lot of companies just expect you to have some other log-on in some other place. So the seamlessness comes from the technology, but it also comes from the mindset of the organization. As we see ourselves, that mindset is that you shouldn't really feel the move.
And of course, you're one of the companies here at Infosec advising businesses on just how to do that. And of course, you were the person that oversaw the creation of the services that you're providing. In particular, the fact that it's a single solution and not a group of various modules. Was that always important from the outset?
For me, it's critical. I see the problem as companies acquire certain solutions along the road and kind of jam them together in a sort of plasticine model jumbled together. And when you do that, you have seams that form. Whether it's the security doesn't quite work that way for this solution, or the storage doesn't quite work that way for this solution. So we paid upfront to build all those platform pieces. having done that has enabled us and empowered us to now accelerate into the cloud application service space, but with a secure platform as the underpinning.
Obviously we're in times at the moment of global recession. You can't ever talk about business without it coming up at some point. Has that, do you feel, offered more opportunities for the development of cloud, or has it hampered it in any way?
I can't speak for other companies, but our growth rate speaks for itself. It's still remarkable. And I guess it's not just that you're in the cloud. I think that's not enough. I think you have to remove complexity. I think you have to drop their cost base. And I think you have to offer an ongoing roadmap of things that make that data more useful and certainly extend the security arms around more and more parts of the organization. So my suspicion is that any company that isn't investing in a long-term roadmap with the cloud, with unification, with platform, will probably be struggling in this environment. But we're not feeling that.
And at the end of the day, data historically was expensive, and if you're still storing it in, as we did historically, it's only going to get more expensive.
Absolutely. But it's not just about virtualization, that's just moving the problem. We see the storage of data as a whole new science, something that not only just keeps the stuff safe and secure and useful, but allows different applications to use it in different ways, to empower end users and business with that. We would think of it as gold, in that data. If it's exposed in the right way, if it's exploited in the right way and given back to customers, it's a valuable resource.
In terms of security and in terms of development of the technology itself, where do you see cloud going in the next 2 or 3 years? What will we be stood here talking about in 2015?
My suspicion is that we're talking about standards. If you were to use the analogy of banking, very old concept with a lot of regulation and control. When you move from one to another, your cash moves with you. But in data terms, there's very little of that. And we see ourselves as pioneers somewhat in moving data and certainly offering options, but also the coverage of what one would expect to be, to have to conform to as a data bank in the sky. You would have to fit into certain regulations. They don't exist. So I think in 3 years' time, we'll be talking about the ones that have just been legislated.